Going that way? Go. Okay. No, because if it wasn't for you, I would have not taken Anderson on Saturday night. I would have taken Tomac. Then you brought something to my attention, and that's why I changed my bet. Nobody's won 3 in a row. I couldn't even think of someone who in the 450 class that's won 3 in a row. I was thinking like it had to be back during Villapoto's times. I don't think Dungey went 3 in a row. Yeah, that's why I changed it. Yeah, 250 East is going to be pretty good this week. You have Jet Lawrence out there. Faulkner hopefully does well. But, yeah. And that was a nice meal you made me on Valentine's Day, too. Thank you. The show's going to start in just a second. I gotta go.
You're live.
Let's get down to the starting line, and I'll tell you about what you're going to see on tonight's show. And the next time, try this segment. We've got a nice video I put together for you on how to remove pipes with dents in them, or how to remove the dent from the pipe. In the Here's the Problem segment, we've got some paint questions about adhesion, a few other things going on there in the Moto Showcase. We've got a 93 YZ that was sent to us. And we also have a What's It Worth with a Honda. We've got an expansion chamber video from our good friend Roy Vanderveer. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming up on Vintage Motocross Q&A. Good evening, everyone. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you for joining me tonight, and thank you, Jordan, Chelsea, and Susie, for helping me put the show together. We've got a really good one for you tonight. I think you're going to enjoy it. Don't forget to keep sharing the show. Whether you're on Facebook or you are on YouTube, we will have a random share giveaway winner that we will announce tomorrow, Thursday, on our page, Vintage Motocross Q&A. So keep sharing the show, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to comment Motion Pro. Our YouTube channel is going really, really well, but we invite everyone to share it with your friends. Tell some people about it. We are doing great there. You could subscribe, and you'll get a little alert just like this. It tells you when we're live on the air. You'll be able to see all of our past shows, all of our present shows, including our interviews. You got a great interview that just went up there on Sunday, an interview I had with Brian Myerscough, very interesting man. So you could see that on YouTube, and please subscribe to that channel. It's growing. It's going really, really well. How are the pros watching the show? How are the experts watching it? They're sitting back watching the show on their big screen TV while they comment through their phone. So you could watch it on YouTube, on your big screen TV, comment from your phone. That's really a great way to enjoy the show. As always, I want to thank all of our sponsors, Motion Pro, Vintco, Racer X, Full Circle Racing, Preston Petty Products, Bill's Pipes, Northwest Mako CZ, and Sunrise Vapor Blasting. On tonight's Next Time Try This segment, we're going to be talking about how to get a dent out of your pipe. This has been a topic on the show many, many times. We've often spoken about it, but I've never had the opportunity to make a video. We're going to get a closer look at some of the tools that we're going to be using to perform this little task. And yeah, it's really nothing more than this, which I'll give you a closer look at, and you'll understand how they work, and a bottle of MAP gas just like this. If you have a torch, that's always good too. So let's get a closer look, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, there are 2 caps that go on the end of the pipes, and they look just like this. This one will go on the back of your pipe where the stinger is. As you can see, the circumference of that piece of steel is a little bit narrower than it would be at the front. In between these 2 pieces of steel, the plate on the back and this circular piece, is a piece of rubber. When you put this thing on the pipe and you tighten up these 3 bolts, you're then going to tighten up these 2 bolts
and it's going to draw closer to the pipe and cause a seal between this piece of rubber. The piece that goes on the front, of course, at your header is a little bit bigger. They make these things quite large so they will fit a variety of different pipes, and basically it works the same way. The circular piece of steel, the 3 bolts, of course, the rubber that causes it to seal. Right here you'll see there's a little hole in there. The purpose of that is, of course, to get the air, which you're going to use from your compressor. You're going to get air into the pipe, and you have a little gauge right here. We'll talk more about the pressure in just a minute. But basically, that is what these 2 little caps are. That's how they work. Let's put them on the pipe, and we'll continue on from there. First thing you want to do is maybe run these bolts in a little bit, just so the end of your pipe, the stinger, fits in there. This way you can run them down comfortably and make sure it's tight. You also want to leave a little gap. In other words, you don't want to tighten these end bolts too much. You want to have a little gap in there so when you do tighten them, it presses down on the rubber, giving you a good seal. One thing I should have mentioned earlier too is you do want to make sure your pipe doesn't have any leaks in it. If there are any seams in your pipe that are cracked, you're going to want to make sure that you get those things sealed up so you don't have any leaks on the way. Now you can see there's a little gap right in there, so when I tighten these 2 bolts from the outside, we'll get a really good seal on the end of that pipe. Make sure everything is snug on here, especially these 3 bolts that go to the stinger. There's going to be some pressure in that pipe. It won't blow off, there's not going to be an explosion, but what will happen is it'll start to leak. You'll know right away because you'll be losing pressure. You'll see that from the gauge, plus you'll also probably be able to hear that. And here's the dent, by the way, that we're going to be working on. And we're going to do the same thing on this end. We'll run the bolts in a little bit. Tighten up these guys a little bit. And we should have a good seal there.
We're going to add some air to the pipe. I bring it up to around 40 pounds. From there, you're going to take your torch and you're going to want to keep it toward the edge. Heat up the edge, in other words, of the dent first. You want to heat it up. You're going to get it cherry red. Again, I'm only using MAP gas here, but it works really, really well. So I go around to the edge of my dent, and slowly, gradually, you'll see that the air pressure does bring up the dent in the pipe.
Well, there it is. I hope you enjoyed our little demonstration. There's still a little smoke coming out of that thing. But anyway, you can see that the dent has been removed. Remember, about 40 pounds of air pressure. You want to keep that area cherry red when you're doing it. Check your pipes for leaks before you begin. If you do have a pinhole here or there, you just need to keep the air pressure at 40 pounds. If you could repair those little dents with some brazing, that would really be best. Then you don't have to play with the pressure too much. And I did it all with these 2 pieces like this and a little MAP gas. Okay. So next time you get a dent in a pipe and you want to try and take it out and make it look a little more presentable, try that.
There was one thing I wanted to bring to your attention I didn't put in the video. I sanded the pipe after I got most of the dent out, and I advise you to do the same thing. Let it cool off, and then after that, look at where you've repaired the dent. You might have a few little low spots, just like you see here. Repeat the process. With the caps on, heat it up again. Just work on those dents, though. Concentrate the heat from the torch onto those little dents, and they'll rise too. The purpose of that, I'd rather you do it 2 times than raise it and make it too hot once and try and get it all out at once. It's better to do it a couple of times and make it nice and even than to try and get it all out at once. Great job on the video editing, Jordan. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching the little demonstration. Jeff Kokoski brought all that to my attention last week. I thought it was a good time to do that. Jordan, what do we got up next? We have got the Moto Showcase. Tonight in the Moto Showcase, the bike was brought to us by Phil Bauford. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Bauford, B-O-U-F-F-O-R-D. And it is a 1993 YZ250. I'm going to read to you a little bit about Phil's bike, and Jordan is going to go through the slides. Phil says, I was looking for parts bike for my 1991 YZ250 I owned. Came across a 1993 YZ250 for $800 on the marketplace. I drove about 4 hours, and just as I suspected, those glamour shots that I saw were not exactly what I'd seen when I got there and saw the bike in person. Against my best interest, and because it was such a long drive, I did wind up purchasing the bike. I took it home, I disassembled it completely, and I discarded many, many of the parts. In fact, the pile of discarded parts was significantly larger than the parts that remained. I ordered all new aftermarket parts for the bike, and I replaced everything that I could. I sent the cylinder to Millennium to recoat it with a standard bore. While waiting for that, I was trying to tackle some of the welding on the frame. I discovered that the frame had been rotted out on the underside. I reached out to one of my Missouri vintage motocross friends out in St. Louis, and they said that they had a frame. I asked how much. They said it was yours. Just come and get it. I love the people out in St. Louis, Missouri. It was a 94 WR 250 frame, and I grabbed that and I went home with it. The frame was solid. I had it powder coated. While waiting for the part that I ordered, I decided to tally the cost, which I wish I had never done. And between buying the bikes and all the aftermarket parts that I purchased, I was in for well over $4,000. I did have the cylinder replayed, as I mentioned earlier, but I also had the suspension done by Lactate Racing. I was a little late in pulling the plug on certain things, but everything broke or that was questionable was replaced. I ordered fork springs from Canon, and everything worked out for me. I was a 200-pound rider, and everything was the way I expected it. The only items original left on this bike are the motor, the front and rear suspension, and the wheels. Not much of a restoration, but more of a race rebuild. It took me about 4 months to complete. I raced it one time, then unfortunately I tore my ACL while getting ready for a race. For graphics, rather than going with the normal Damon Bradshaw, Jeff Emig reproduction look, I opted to go for a Paul Malin replica graphics kit from Evo MX. I know I spent more than a 93 pristine bike is worth, but it's what I do, and I love motocross. Joe, thanks for putting my bike on the show. Phil Balfour, thanks for sending the bike in, and send me your mailing address and I will get you a coffee cup just like this. Compliments of Vintage Motocross Q&A and Preston Petty. And Phil Agapio, your cup is on the way from last week's show. What do we got next? Oh, yeah, Preston Petty's still looking for dealers. They're still looking for dealers, so get a hold of Paul Standard at Preston Petty Products, and if you got a retail outlet or however you get parts out to your retail buyers, Paul Standard is looking to help you out. He's looking to help you become a dealer. This week's Preston Petty special are translucent fenders. That's the beautiful translucent works type, see-through, not exactly sun comes through. You know what I'm talking about, translucent. 2 fenders and 3 plates, $125.50. Get a hold of them at PrestonPettyProducts.com. And you know what? Preston Petty's got this new fender coming out. It's the full radius fender. It looks just like this, okay? It's a little longer on both ends than the previous fenders are. And this is one of the first ones that came out of the mold. This is the prototype. It's got a beautiful logo on it. And I'll tell you, for a prototype, this thing came out really, really well. This was only the first of only maybe 3 or 4 fenders that first came out of the mold. And when a fender like that comes out of the mold in the beginning, you might see a few imperfections in it. This one is damn near perfect, and this is available now at Preston Petty Products. They've got all the dimensions on their page. So I want to thank Paul Standard. New products always coming out, and the ones that you've been making are absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Paul Standard. And here's the problem segment tonight. We take a look at some of the questions that have been sent in to us in the past week. I think our first question is from John Lombard. I'm restoring a 77 Suzuki RM tank. I prefer not to use a Rust-Oleum Sunburst Yellow, which I hear is a very, very close match. Can you help me with a paint code? I can. What you want to look for is Hyundai Chrome Yellow. The code is 4371 OEM code IA. Hyundai Chrome Yellow is what you're looking for. So you can go to any auto body supplier, tell them that's the color you want. If you have some paint on your tank yet, bring your paint with you, and you can see how great the actual match will be. Yeah, Rust-Oleum Sunburst, it's good if you want to do maybe a set of side panels or touch up a fender or something like that on that era Suzuki, which did have painted body parts on it. But I wouldn't recommend it for the gas tank. It's not going to be very durable, and it's not going to hold up the gas and stuff like that. Hyundai Chrome Yellow, 4371. That's what you're looking for. Jeff Kokoski. Boy, Jeff almost never misses a week. He's a real big supporter of the show, and he's always got some good questions for us, too. So let's see what Jeff's got this week. Do you have any advice for getting paint to stick to a side panel of my YZ250? Jeff's question is actually a little bit longer than that. And, yeah, well, you know what? We got an audience here who knows exactly what we're talking about. But on the side panel of that YZ, toward the bottom, it is black. okay? And Jeff was having a little bit of a difficult time having the paint stick to that yellow plastic. He said he tried using some fine abrasives on it. He tried using steel wool. He tried using lacquer thinner and wiping it down, letting it dry. But no matter what he does, he's having difficulty getting the paint to stick to that area. What I would recommend, Jeff, is a product called Bulldog Adhesion Promoter. You want to wipe it down. You want to wipe it down just like you did with the alcohol and everything, but you want to try and get this stuff on there before you put your paint. It's going to really, really help with the adhesion. And this does come in its own spray can. You can use it that way. If you really want a professional job and you want it to last forever, get it to where you have to mix it in a spray gun and put it on. It will really, really make the paint adhere. This is the stuff that professionals use to get paint to stick to plastic bumpers on cars, if that tells you anything. And it really, really sticks, and it makes the paint a little more flexible. Now, you could also go with the vinyl route. You know, maybe cut some vinyl like that. It does come in a more of a satin black finish, and you might be able to get it. I'm sure you'll be able to get it to stick to that side panel. I know in your question, which is a little bit longer than we showed here on the show, you were concerned about getting that black vinyl, if you were going to use it, down into the vents of that airbox area. Maybe you could spray in there. You could just get some black satin paint and spray in there, and then use the vinyl over the side. But if you don't want to go with the spray paint and the vinyl sticking to the side of that, you want to get yourself some Bulldog Adhesive Promoter, and that will absolutely get that paint to stick to plastic. Not on gas tanks, but on fenders and on side panels. Mark Ramos, Joe, I love the show. Can you tell me who the go-to person is for rebuilding early monoshocks like the 1975 MX250 and 400B and the Yamaha YZ125C models? Yeah, I can tell you. There's a great guy out there in Pennsylvania, and the name of the company is Pro Action. They're out in Pennsylvania, and they do a lot of work on the early YZ125 shocks, the ones that you would see on the 75 and 76 models, probably the 77 and 78s too. But yeah, Pro Action out in Pennsylvania. I've heard some good things about them. Thanks for the question, Mark. I'm glad you're enjoying the show.
Hi, I'm Tommy Croft, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A with Joe Abadi. We'll be right back with my dear friend Joe.
Oh, Gary Chapman.
Hi guys, Brandon here with Motion Pro, bringing to you the world's first non-leaking cable luber. You heard me right. Non-leaking cable luber. Motion Pro has designed a very ingenious tool. It's very simple to use. There's two halves and a rubber grommet that seals the canister around the cable. By connecting the two halves together, you create a compression fit. Now once that's tight, you insert the straw for your cable lube. Of course, I'm going to recommend Motion Pro's very best cable lube. You insert the straw in the end of the cable luber. You fill the fluid into the canister, and there's nowhere else for the fluid to go but into the cable. It's quick, it's clean, it's affordable at $19.99, available from your retailers nationwide. Motion Pro Cable Luber V3, get it today. Keep your cables fresh.
In the What's It Worth segment tonight, we're going to be taking a look at a 1981 Honda CR250. This is, of course, the portion of the show where I encourage you, the viewers at home, to take your best guess on what you think this bike recently sold for. I will tell you this much. It was sold in Lawton, Iowa on December 30th, 2021. I will give you the description of the bike. Jordan will go through the slides. This bike is a time capsule. It is in absolutely excellent condition for its age. It's an 1881 Honda CR450R. This is a one-year only bike for Honda. I purchased it from the original owner in 1985. I had kept it stored inside since my purchase. The bike has less than 15 hours on it since new, and hasn't been ridden since 1982. I put on new DC plastics, a seat cover, a new uni filter, new tires, and there's some Motion Pro clutch levers on there, Alloy grips, Polysport pipe guard. Included in the sale are all the original plastics, which are just about impossible to find at this point, including that very difficult to find front number plate with the mounting hardware. The original tires were on the bike, and the original front tire is pictured to show how little use the bike actually had on it. It had the original grips on it as well. It's in excellent condition with the original fasteners, cables, fork boots, chains, sprockets, handlebars, and controls, except for the clutch cover, which he mentioned earlier. The original tires were on the bike and showed minimal wear. The original plastic is good and restorable if you desire. The front number plate has one small crack. This is an original CR450, and I doubt you will ever find one in this nice of a condition and it's never been abused. Before you can go ahead and put in your best guesstimate on what you think this bike recently sold for. But while it does look it's like it is in great condition, I was a little concerned with the changing of the fenders and the side panels and certain things. It does appear to be in really, really nice condition and probably shouldn't have been altered in any way, but the original parts are with the bike. So I wouldn't be all that concerned. If they weren't with the bike and you didn't see them, I'd say, well, something's a little askew here. But all that being said, 1981 Honda CR450, how much do you think it sold for? 25? 45. This bike actually sold for $3,302, $3,302 in beautiful Lawton, Iowa, back in December. And I think that was a pretty fair deal. It is a one-year only bike, not a real high watermark in Honda's history, but it is a one-year only bike, and it is in really, really nice condition too. So there you have it, 3302, 1981 Honda CR450. Full Circle Racing, Tom McAllister, what a great guy, and he still has a fabulous special going on. He will refinish your hubs back and front for just $50 a piece. He'll powder coat them. Of course, he bead blasts them first, gets them all cleaned up. For just $10 more, he'll do the bracking plates as well. That is in satin black or in gloss black. If you want a special color, for just $20 one-time fee, Tom will do that for you too. So get a hold of Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing, and don't forget, it isn't only about vintage. He's got everything you need for your dual-purpose bikes and your road bikes as well. For sprockets, from wheels to spokes and McAllister, Full Circle Racing. Thank you, Tom. Did you know that Preston Petty had a device to stop a bike from diving? It was called the Preston Petty No Dive Kit. And it was a very, very interesting and unique little item. Not very many parts went to it, but if Jordan changes the picture, I'll tell you a little bit about exactly how this thing worked. Preston's idea was to stop the bike from diving when you applied the front brake. Now, as you've ridden plenty of motorcycles before, when you're heading down a straightaway, maybe you're heading toward a turn, you grab the front brake, the front suspension does collapse. Now, Preston had an idea, and he devised it to where he put something on the front brake hub, and it had a rod that went right up to the triple clamp. It would make the front end rigid only under braking. So if you had the brake on, it would send the force up to the triple clamp. It wouldn't collapse the fork. You let the brake off, the suspension would travel as normal. Now, a lot of really famous and legendary riders did test this thing out, and they didn't get it. It was on Brock Glover's bike. Here's a picture of it there on Brock's bike. Also, Brad Lackey used it on his Honda. Roger DeCoster actually tested it a few times too, and a lot of people liked it, but it just never seemed to really catch on for some reason. However, in the 80s, a lot of the factory road race teams started to use Preston's idea. And they did it with a little more of a hydraulic setup, and they didn't go into buying Preston Petty's patent on that, unfortunately. And they did use it, and it did work on their road race bikes. And you can imagine when those guys are barreling down a straightaway at 200 miles an hour, and they hit that front brake, they do not want that front end to dive. And they used it a lot throughout the 80s and 90s. I don't think it is so much in use today, but it was a really, really unusual idea, and it worked really well. It's just one of those things that never caught on in motocross. And now if somebody asks you, you could say, yeah, I do know about the Preston Petty No Dive Kit. By the way, that was sent in to us, the request for that was sent in to us by our good friend, Craig Smolin. I just wanted to mention that. Now, let's move on. Sunrise Vapor Blasting. Mark Ferriester, he's down there in Modesto, does a great job with all of our aluminum products, and he's getting things in the mail all the time, and people are raving about how quickly he does it. So if you have something that is made of any type of metal, it could be aluminum, it could be magnesium, whatever it might be, anything that's delicate, you don't want to change the profile of, get it down to Mark Ferriester at Sunrise Vapor Blasting. He'll get it all cleaned up at a very, very reasonable rate and has a faster turnaround time than In-N-Out Burger. Am I allowed to say that? I hope so. You'll be in and out of there really, really quick with Mark Ferriester and Sunrise Vapor Blasting. Thank you, Mark. We've got a very, very interesting video tonight that was sent in to us by our good friend Roy Vanderveer. I've got it right here. We're going to pop it in and see what Roy has to say.
Hello, my name is Roy, and I'm here today to talk to you about how a 25-cent part could cost you the whole deal. This is a one-of-a-kind cylinder. It's a center port RM500. The factory GP teams had about a dozen of them made to a certain spec. This one is outside of that original 12. 12 is rare. This is one of one. I got to do some testing on this bike and help the owner dial it in, mostly with carburation issues. We got it from the baseline to something much better. Time went by. I checked in with the owner to say, hey, how's things going with that RM500? And he had to say, not good. It's running, as a matter of fact, it's running really bad. It's knocking, it's pinging, it's surging, it's hard to start. None of these things were the case the day that we had it out at the track. I had plans to jump in and do a leak down test first, but I decided let's just tear this thing down. We needed to see what was going on anyway. And before I got very far, I found that all 4 of the base nuts were loose. Here's where the problem came in, and it's a little thing, but little things matter. You got to make sure to use the right hardware on these things. And what I found, all of those loose base nuts were all serrated nuts, as opposed to smooth flange nuts. So let's look at what a serrated flange nut is for. Because I can tell you it's not for this. You don't use them anywhere on your motorcycle. Hexagon nuts with a flange and serration are most commonly used in joining wood and plastic. The other dead giveaway was the serrations are actually worn into every pocket where the nuts go. So it even did a little bit of damage to the cylinder. With this being run loose as it was for at least a little bit of time, spent a lot of time inspecting the cylinder for cracks. I blasted all the paint off, made sure everything was airtight. Going back together, we're going to use the correct flange nut with a smooth bottom. You may have heard people say, don't use serrated, don't use it, don't use it. Well, okay, why? Well, here's why. It will chew its way into the aluminum. When that happens, the clamping pressure becomes less, and before you know it, you've got no torque on your base nuts or head nuts or engine mount nuts, and things are going to come apart. This was a close one. It would have been a real shame if this cracked anywhere around the base or internally. It looks like we got away with it, but when you're doing your race builds and getting ready for the season, make sure you're not using serrated nuts anywhere. Till next time, back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Roy Vanderveer. It was a good little expansion chamber. Jordan, what do we have up next? We're going to take a commercial break. Don't forget to keep sharing the show. Tomorrow on Vintage Motocross Q&A on the old Facebook page, we'll be giving away, or we will be announcing who the winner is of the sticker sheet tonight. We'll be right back.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
This Week in Motocross History is always brought to you by Racer X Magazine, available on your newsstand and online now. Don't forget to see our ad in the back of each copy of Racer X. What do we have in motocross history this week, Jordan? 1976, a star is born. Michael Pichon is born in France. He would later become the first French rider to win a 125cc AMA Supercross main event, as well as the first to win a 125cc AMA Supercross championship. He would race in America through 1999, first on a privateer Honda CR125. Then he went on to a pro circuit Kawasaki. Then he went on to Suzuki. And finally, with Team Honda. Upon returning to Europe in the year 2000, Pichon would earn himself a pair of FIM 125 MX1 World Championships, 2 World Championships for Michel Pichon, and he also won a few big ones here in America. Happy birthday, Michel Pichon, this week. 1984, Wardy at the Kingdom. Future AMA Motorcycle Hall of Famer Jeff Ward wins his first AMA Supercross main event in Seattle at the Kingdom. Ward topped Johnny O'Mara, who won his first AMA Supercross just the week before. Both Ward and O'Mara were going to win AMA Supercross championships, O'Mara in 84, Wardy in 85 and in 87. Finishing third was the veteran Bob Hurricane Hanna that night. 1994. After 4 straight wins in his first season to defend his title, Jeremy McGrath took his first loss, and that was in the 5th round at Tampa. The winner was Team Yamaha's Michael Craig, father of current star Yamaha racing guy Christian Craig. Yep. Christian's dad, Michael, used to ride. It was the one and only win of Craig's AMA Supercross career. Kawasaki riders Mike Kudrowski and Mike LaRocco ran second and third that night, while McGrath finished a distant 5th after taking an early spill in the race. And that's it for this week in motocross history. We've got some announcements tonight. Jordan, what do we have up first? Oh, Bill's Pipes. Don't forget to check them out on Facebook. Bill's Pipes, still doing a great job for so many of the bikes out there. But the best way to get a hold of them is on Facebook. Their phone number is on there. You can contact them through email there. And, of course, leave a message on Facebook. I want to thank Randy Scott for helping us out with our sponsorship from Bill's Pipes. Vintage Motocross Radio. Last week we had a great interview with Brian Myerscough. They went on for about an hour, even a little bit over an hour. So if you want to listen to the Brian Myerscough interview, you can go over to Vintage Motocross Radio on Facebook. But you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast Breaker, and all the other podcast channels that you see there. Stay tuned. We'll have another interview coming up real soon. We've got another race coming up down in Southern California. The Old School Scrambles Racing Group has an event coming up on February 27th. This is on the Glen Helen truck track. And unbelievably, everybody who isn't from Southern California ride for free. They ride for free, compliments of Rod Lake. So if you're not doing anything on February 27th, get down to Glen Helen. The Stump Jumpers Motorcycle Club once again has the Desert 100 coming up. That is on April 3rd, 2022 in Odessa, Washington. They have a vintage class. The vintage class is kind of narrow. It's for 86 and older bikes. And for you older guys, the race is only 1 lap. The bad news is that 1 lap is 50 miles. 50 miles. Stump Jumpers Motorcycle Club, Desert 100. That's coming up April 3rd. Start getting in shape. The Pacific Northwest Vintage Motocross schedule is out. They've got a bunch of races coming up in April, May, June, July. Get online and you can find out exactly when there's a race in your area. Pacific Northwest Vintage Motocross. Oh, my good friends back there at American Classic Racing. Out in northern New Jersey. Northeast. They are in New Jersey. They are in New York, but they got their schedule is out. They always run some great tracks back there, the ACR guys. The first one out of the box is Budge Creek. They've also got a Nesco, Holiday Mountain. Unadilla is on the schedule for the MX Rewind. Tomahawk, Evansville, Broome, Tioga. They got some national tracks and some really historic tracks too. Southwick they usually have on the schedule. So get over to ACRMX, check out their schedule on their Facebook page or on their website. Always something great going on there. The Northwest Racing schedule is out, and there's been a race cancellation already for Friday, March 18th. The cross country is canceled. However, the day after, on March 19th, they're going to make that a double points race. So for whatever reason, the race is canceled. The cross-country race is canceled on the 18th, but on the 19th, it's a double points race. So mark your calendar. If your club has an event that's coming up, get it to me. Email me or send it through Facebook, through Messenger, however you can. I'm not that difficult to find. Get me your event schedule, and I'll get it up here on Vintage Motocross Q&A. The finish line. We've got some announcements. Oh, no, first we just got the finish line. And we've got some bearings available for you from Northwest Mako CZ. CZ crank bearings for your 400, just $25 a piece. $25 a piece. Get a hold of Alan Brown at Northwest Mako CZ. Vintage Motocross Q&A t-shirts and hoodies are still available in growth gray and white. They got the logo across the front. They have my autograph across the back. Just $19.99 for t-shirts, and a couple of bucks more, you can get yourself a hoodie. Follow the link in the show description. One will be delivered directly to your door. Vintage Motocross Q&A sponsorship opportunities still available. All of our sponsors are really, really happy with the results they have been seeing. We've been reaching about 20,000 people a week, and everybody's real happy. So if you've got a little company on Facebook or anywhere that has anything to do with parts or any kind of service that you provide, Sunrise Vapor Blasting or Bill's Pipes or anything like that, get a hold of me. I'll get you a sponsorship proposal package, and you'll be surprised at what can get done here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. I think that about wraps it up for us tonight here on this show. I hope you had a nice Valentine's Day, which was just a couple of days ago. No interview show this week, but we'll have one coming up in the very near future. I'll be sure to announce that for you. I will see if the boys are available. Gino and Rocco! Gino! Thanks, Jordan, for helping us out here. Jordan! Come on, Gino! There he is. Get out, everybody.